So last time, it seemed like everything escalated very quickly. But we need to remember, that was literally right after Kazuki told Amane to get the fuck out. So it was kind of like we just jumped straight back into the continuation of that, which, as you can imagine, would end up escalating a lot. To the point where 2 people are already dead. And one of them's gonna probably basically die. I mean, everyone dies. Like, by the time we'd completed emergency first aid and carried the wounded back to their tents, wounded, the only one who was wounded that can be healed is Sakashita, but I feel like the other two, no. The sun was already rising. On the verge of unconsciousness, Captain Sakashita told me the location of the food she'd hidden away, and left its management in my hands. Well, you just fucking dig it up and it's just people. Oh no. I'm trying to make light of the situation, but it's really not.
やっぱりね、絶対に隠してると思ってたんだ。あの女、独り占めするつもりだったんだ。
Honestly, you know what?
それは違うと思うわよ。
It's just like a stash, you know, like a just in case, but you feel like you'd use the just in case before the eating of the flesh. You know what I mean?
なんでさ、この場所、先生だって知らなかったんだよ。もし独り占めするつもりだったのなら、もうとっくに食べちゃってるわよ。
It's all just an atrocity.
だったら、どうして？これはきっと、いよいよ最後という時に配給するつもりだったのね。
We went past the last possible. You mean like the last possible moment of like starvation? Like surviving, rather? I feel like we've been past that.
誰だって最後ぐらい白いお米を食べてから死にたいでしょ?
Ah, that's what that meant.
それで死んじゃったら意味ないじゃん。食べずに我慢できる時期なんかとっくの昔に終わってたんだし、さっさと出すべきだったんだよ。
What's one more meal of rice gonna do for us? It's in this situation.
あなただったら出した？私なら埋めたりしないで、とっとと一人で食べちゃうね。
Sounds about right.
でしょうね。つかさ、いつの間にかタメ口だよね、風見。
You're new here or what? What's going on? No, you're...
先輩というだけで尊敬しろと言われても。
Especially after the insanity?
何？ほんと生意気なやつだな。
That's, you know, Kazuki.
ありました。クーラーボックス出てきました。
Oh boy.
よしどけ。あとは私がやる。
No, I feel like I don't want you handling anything.
ダメよ。食料は私が管理します。
Yeah, she is not stable. I'm clearly.
うっせんだよ。そうやって今度はあんたが独り占めするつもりだろ。
Insanity.
やめて。私そうやって争うなら、この食べ物は全部捨てます。
Damn, now that's a threat.
バカやめろ。
Did her brain finally burst a blood vessel?
金田さん?
What the shit? After briefly crouching down and grabbing her head, Kaneda Senpai suddenly arched her neck backward and began rubbing the back of her skull against the ground. Ooh. This bizarre outburst certainly didn't seem to be some kind of ploy to distract us from food. I mean, she did have a head injury.
金田さん、聞こえる？どこがどんな風に痛いの？
Oh my god. It's been not, you don't want head pain in this situation. I don't know if we could do anything. I don't think. It looked as if she was instinctively trying to lower the position of her head.
小出さん、金田さんの体を上から押さえて暴れさせないように。
Can't we, for 5 minutes, not have a stressful situation? Either she was trying to find a position that would lessen her agony somewhat, or her movements were involuntary. The result of something badly wrong with her head. If tilting her head downward was making the pain somewhat bearable, then one possibility immediately came to mind. As Koide held Kanada's convulsing body still, I reached into her nostrils and pulled out the cotton I'd stuffed in them. As soon as I unblocked her nose, a large amount of blood began to flow from it. Oh, am I right about the blood vessel? God, I was just... Why do I say words? Why can't I just stop talking? I took the sock and pressed it to Kaneda-senpai's nose. Her nosebleed showed no signs of stopping. The stain that appeared on the sock was red at the center, but its outer edges were a light yellow. Ooh. Oh. That ain't good. Holding her head low to minimize the flow of blood from the fracture near the anterior skull base, I squeezed her nasal cavity shut with my fingers, but the bleeding continued regardless. Oh god, it's...
大丈夫よ。とにかく髄液が鼻から漏れるのを止めれば助かるわ。
Oh, that's horrible.
止めるってどうやって？
Like, imagine that. Don't imagine that, but still.
とにかくテントに運びましょう。ここでは何もできないわ。
Oh my god. Just that thought. On the day of the accident itself, Shikanai-senpai had suffered a fracture on the base of her skull. While she was conscious immediately afterwards, she'd rolled herself into a ball, moaning while clenching at her head, just like Kaneda was doing right now. She had died 10 minutes later. Shikanai-senpai, who'd bled from both her ears and nose, had probably suffered from... God damn it. Sometimes I just can't say words. As cerebrospinal fluid flowed out of her cranium, air had rushed in to replace it. Oh! The pressure on her brain had caused her cerebellum to stop functioning and her body to stop breathing. At this rate, Kaneda would suffer the same fate. Oh god.
すみません、金田先輩。おそらくはバス転落時の頭部損傷の時点で何らかのトラブルを抱えていたんだとは思いますが、私が顔面を殴ってとどめを刺してしまったようです。
Well, Kazuki, you just killed a person.
そっか。 それも仕方ないよね。まあそういうこともあるさ。で、私いつ死ぬのかな。
Soon?
わかりません。10分後に死んでしまう可能性もありますし、あるいは数日持ちこたえるかもしれませんが、どうせ死ぬなら早く死んでさっさと楽になりたいな。
It's like you survived this long only to then get bested by prior injuries.
機能症は手術すれば治る怪我です。まだ諦めないでください。
But once something happens, especially when your body's super weak, it's usually over.
ねえ風見、私死ぬ前に白いご飯が食べたいな。
Do we feed a person who's about to die? I know that's fucked up, but
そうおっしゃるだろうと思って今小出さんにお米を炊いてもらっています。
dude, niceness and everything just goes out the fucking window when you're in this situation, huh?
とは言っても埋められていたクーラーボックスから出てきたお米は2合程度です。お腹いっぱいってわけにはいきませんが。
At least she'll be able to taste rice.
最後の食事としては上等かな。まずは薄いおかゆから体をなじませていきましょう。せっかくだし普通に炊いたご飯がいい。
She's like, I'm gonna die anyway, just give me the rice.
もう何日もまともな食事をしていません。固形物を急にたくさん食べると消化不良を起こしますよ。
It doesn't matter.
そういうもの？消化能力が落ちているので食べても消化することができずに吐き戻してしまいます。そうなってしまえば食べたものをすべて吐き出しても胃の痙攣が収まらずにやがて血を吐くようになります。
Why is everything terrible?
戦時中に物資輸送を断たれて食料に貧困した島から撤退した兵隊が軍医が止めるのも聞かずに隠れて食事を大食いして何人も死んだそうですよ。そんな死に方は苦しいだろうな。
That mixed with what you're going through right now is not good.
ですから少しずつ慣らしていきましょう。もうすぐおかゆが炊き上がるはずです。そういえば小出遅いね。あいつ一人で全部食っちゃってるんじゃないよね。
Oh, no.
小出さんにも同じように消化不良の話はしましたし、それはないと思いますけど。
No.
そうですね。他の人たちも気になりますし、少し様子を見に行ってきます。
Even in a situation like this, I wanted to believe that we still had some shred of rationality left. Koide was an unusually cowardly young woman. I'd assumed that telling her, "You'll die if you eat," would keep her from doing anything reckless. It was a naive assumption on my part. In front of the primitive cooking furnace we'd built by piling up stones, I found Koide-san lying on the ground with her arms around her stomach. At her side, there was a single metal mess kit full of steaming white rice that looked freshly cooked. Most likely, the process of cleaning and cooking the precious food we'd discovered in that cooler had been too much for her to bear. As soon as that fluffy white rice was ready, she'd shoveled handfuls of it into her mouth, only to have her weakened digestive system reject it.
だからあれほど警告したのに。ごめんなさい。ごめんなさい。
There was blood in the vomit leaving her mouth. At this point, she'd throw up anything else she tried to eat in a similar way. She'd need to be fed intravenously. But of course, we didn't have the necessary fluid lying around.
テントまで運んであげたいけれど、腕を骨折していてそれもできないの。 ごめんなさい。自分の足で立ち上がってテントまで行きなさい。そうしたら治療はしてあげる。
We should have all listened to Kazuki from the start. All of us. Every single one of us. She should have been the leader from the start. Instead of, I mean, she was trying, and then, nah, I'm the captain here. I'm the leader. While I'd spoken of treating her, there was virtually nothing I could actually do. She didn't have the strength to digest any meal I might provide her, and without food, she wasn't going to last very long, especially with the fact that she's vomiting. It was only a matter of time until her body would be racked by fever, robbing her of the strength to stand. It seemed a particularly cruel way for someone who had survived so long in this hellish place to perish. Picking up the mess kit with the rice Koide-san had prepared, I headed for the tent where Captain Sakashita was lying. Oh god. Dude, I got the acid coming up, man. Our prompt first aid efforts had apparently been effective. Her blood pressure had recovered, and she now regained consciousness. Ugh, just what I wanted. I placed the mess kit next to Sakashita's pillow and gave her a brief update on everyone's condition. She listened quietly, offering only brief responses.
そう。ということは、もう立って歩けるのはあなたと先生だけになってしまったわね。
Yep, looks that way.
私もいつまで持つかはわかりません。
No, don't say that, Kazuki. You'll last forever. I was still lucid for now, but breaking my left arm completely had led to intermittent fevers. If my body lost the ability to generate those fevers, I might very well lose consciousness and never wake up again.
もう現状で頼りになるのは越智先生だけですが、その先生は一人にしてくれと言ったきり、一度も姿を見かけていません。
I could imagine that ain't fucking good.
きっと彼はお墓にいるわ。あの人は一人にしてはダメよ。彼はとても弱い人なの。私に彼を止めろと。心配ないわ。お墓にいると言っても、あなたが危惧しているような現場に遭遇するようなことはないから。
I've seen enough gruesomeness here for a fucking lifetime.
わかりました。様子を見に行ってきます。お願いするわ。
We're gonna come back and they'll all be dead, huh? That's what's gonna happen. And I guess I'll just be sad.
この飯盒は置いていきます。おかゆですから食べられるようなら食べてください。私はいいわ。あなたが食べなさい。別に私の分をあなたにあげると言っているわけじゃありません。私の分はちゃんと別に用意してあります。おそらくは最後の食事になるでしょう。遠慮はいりません。どうせ私はもうすぐ死ぬわ。すぐに死ぬ人間に与える食事は制限なさいと言っているのよ。
It's a harsh reality, man.
動ける人間の食事を増やしたところで、結局は限られた食料をただ消費するだけの現状です。すべてを食べ尽くしてしまえば全員死にます。であれば、たとえすぐに死ぬと分かっている傷病者であっても、食事は平等であるべきだと私は思います。
Here's your final meal, I guess.
そう。こんな状況でも意見は変わらないのね。あなたは。
She would never stray.
分かったわ。でも今はとても眠いの。後で目を覚ました時にいただくわ。
She ain't gonna wake up.
お大事に。
None of them are gonna wake up. Or none of them are gonna be alive when I get back. Oh my god. How exactly was she supposed to take care of herself under these circumstances? If you asked me, I wouldn't have been able to reply. Still, the fact that she could hold a coherent conversation was a positive sign. She probably wouldn't die for another 2 days or so. Probably. By this point, I was keeping a running count of how long everyone had to live, as if I were some angel of death. Fucking... oh god, no. How many days had passed since the accident anyway? I couldn't remember off the top of my head. The question was beginning to feel pointless. Pushing my way through the thick undergrowth, I followed the barely visible trail that led to the burial ground Amine and I had visited last night. Or the gravesite, as Sakashita called it. Given that we'd all be ending up here sooner or later, the idea of paying it a visit wasn't particularly appealing, and in my weakened state, the slight uphill slope proved a tedious challenge. Eventually, the uphill path came to an end, and a level clearing came into view. As I drew closer, I could hear the sound of someone digging with a shovel. Oh, is he actually burying him? Of course, the responsible party was Mr. Ochi. His shirt was plastered to his back with sweat.
何をなさっていらっしゃるのですか?
Digging my own grave. After glancing briefly in my direction, he turned back to his digging without meeting my gaze. In a sense, it seemed rather impressive that he still had the energy to be digging holes. But then, once again, when your accumulated fatigue passes a certain threshold, your body just sometimes goes numb to the fact that it's exhausted. In this place, chosen as a burial ground simply because the ground was somewhat softer, 5 graves had already been dug. Of course, they were nothing but simple, unmarked mounds of earth. Their main purpose was to prevent infection, not to memorialize the dead. 5 mounds of earth, 5 graves, and lying in the grass next to Ochi, who was digging a new hole, were the bodies of Sakuma Minori and Ibuki Haruna.
わざわざ運んできたのですか?
放置しておくわけにもいかんだろう。
The two corpses stretched out next to each other were already surrounded by a swarm of flies. If we left them exposed, they would be infested with maggots within a day, and as they rotted, the bodies would become hotbeds of disease, potentially harming those of us still living. The 2 of them had been placed quite carefully in the grass. Their hands were folded in front of their chests. Had Mr. Ochi done that? Oh, yeah. Sakuma Minori had died from a stab to the gut. Haruna Ibuki died from a blow to the head. By him, of course. But right now, there were no traces of pain or bitterness in their faces.
何か用があってきたんだろう。
はい。食事をお持ちしました。それと、状況の報告を。
The situation? It ain't good. At this, Ochi paused in his labors and turned to stare at me. I suppose it would be more accurate to say that he was staring at the mess kit in my hands. He spoke 2 quiet words.
そうか。
Then stuck his shovel in the ground and accepted the food from me. Finding a spot in the shade of a rock wall, Ochi sat down with his back against it, silently opening the mess kit and beginning to eat the thin gruel, flavored only with a pinch of salt.
では、どこからお話ししましょうか?
Oh, we got a lot to... As those words left my mouth, Ochi visibly flinched. Perhaps he was bracing himself for a torrent of condemnation and reproach. Instead, I summarized the condition of the wounded and briefed him on our current food supply. Every word I spoke concerned the present. I didn't lament the past or criticize the choices we'd made. I didn't express my fear of the future or ask him how we might survive this horrible situation. I spoke of the present and nothing else. Mr. Ochi, for his part, listened silently as he ate, saying nothing at all. Eventually, after his metal spoon had repeatedly scraped against the bottom of the mess kit, Ochi appeared at least somewhat sated. Looking up at me, he murmured a few quiet words.
君は俺を恨んでいるだろうね。
I kinda do. Yeah.
人を恨んだところで事態は好転しません。
See, I ain't in the situation, so I can hate whoever I want.
僕が全部悪いんだ。渋滞を嫌って予定にない道を選んだのも俺だ。それに最初に死体を食い始めたのも俺だ。最初は確かに埋葬していたんだ。
But then, oh god.
死んでしまった子を思い、ひざまずいて手を合わせて冥福を祈るような真似もしていた。けどね、どうしても空腹には逆らえなかった。それは人として絶対にしてはいけないことだと頭では分かっていても、どうすることもできない。
That's when you become a monster.
こいつらだって俺の荷物から食料を盗み食いしたじゃないかって。そんな風に考えるようになったら、もうどうでもよくなっていた。それからは死んだ部員の死体を抱え、埋葬にかこつけては最低の行為を繰り返した。ある日、いつものように空腹に耐えかねて飯盒で死体の指を煮ているところを部長の坂下に見られたんだ。
And she was totally down for it.
俺はね、
Oh.
坂下に頬を張られたよ。
And then was totally down for it.
坂下はさ、怒鳴り散らすでもなく、ただ無言で涙を流して下唇を噛みながら俺を睨むんだ。きっと坂下の喉からは恥を知りなさいって言葉が口まで出かかっていたんだと思う。俺はもう頭の中がぐちゃぐちゃになって、情けなくて恥ずかしくて惨めで、坂下に泣いて許しを請うたんだ。それはもう号泣ってやつだ。いい年をした大人の男がどちらも行かない女の子の足にしがみついて、何度も何度も許してくれって大声で泣き叫んだ。
I mean, you were eating people, and she caught you eating people.
どうしようもないことだと分かっていても、どうすることもできなかった。誰にもどうすることもできなかったんだ。ああするしかなかったんだ。だから坂下のことは恨まないでやってほしい。悪いのは全部俺なんだ。
You know, let's just blame you both, really.
どうして今そんな話を？
どうせもう誰も助からない。この世の終わりの先にあの世があるかどうかなんて俺にもわからないけれど、もしそんな世界があるとしたのなら、この世の遺恨をあの世に持ち込みたくない。
This is clear in the air, really.
こんな死に方をする以上、俺の行く先は地獄と呼ばれるような場所だろう。だったらせめて坂下は悪くなかったと、あいつは立派な部長だったのだと誰かに知っておいてほしい。
She stabbed Sakuma.
ただそれだけのエゴだよ。
There was no need to be worried about any of that. Once you're dead, everything's over. That's so dark. If anything, we should be concerning ourselves with the effect the rumors were going to have on the families we'd leave behind. Also, I didn't hate Captain Sakashita nearly as much as people seem to think. In fact, I actually identified with her in some respects, particularly the way she'd been arbitrarily branded as a cold person. Most people form their opinions of her solely on that basis instead of trying to understand her. Even if they're simple school clubs, organizations of any size always need a scary person or two. By playing that role, she'd maintained order on the team. She could be excessively harsh to the other team members, and to some degree, that was just part of presenting herself as a leader. But this time, or in time, she'd come to understand that role came with real responsibility. I'll take responsibility. Speaking those words had clearly been satisfying for her, but they'd also added to the weight bearing down on her shoulders. And no responsibility is heavier than of breaking a taboo. An impossibly weighty burden had thrown itself at her feet, weeping and begging for forgiveness the world would never offer. Ochi had broken under unspeakable stress. It would have been impossible to comfort him with words alone. All that could be done now was to allow himself to indulge in the gluttony and lust that had overwhelmed his sense of morality. Sakshita had chosen to become the outlet for this man's desperate desires. When I tried to imagine her emotional state at the time, I felt genuine sympathy for her. Called all that shit, though, 'cause the guru. And of course, once the dam was broken, she was simply borne along by the flood. However, if the truth of what happened here ever came into the public, she was through. The pity and scorn of strangers would haunt her for the rest of her life. The stain of these events would never, ever to fade. To return to society bearing it for all to see was simply unthinkable. I mean, you see the shit that Amine got from this? Like, imagine if what you guys would have gone through. It had to be washed out here, where the deeds had been done. Under those circumstances, it was small wonder that she'd seen my attempt to escape with Amine as unforgivable. Her irritation at the more freewheeling members of the team was similarly understandable. Once her emotions reached the boiling point, she'd been unable to tolerate Sakuma-senpai and her apparent irresponsibility. No matter what the circumstances, the things Sakashita had done were unforgivable. But even so, I had a certain respect for her, and I believe there was kindness in her heart. I certainly didn't want to be her friend, but if she'd been placed on trial for her crimes, I would willingly have testified for her defense. Man, Kazuki would have got her out of it too, because...
何やら先生はすっかり諦めムードが濃厚なご様子ですが、まだ助かる見込みはあります。
もうそういう気休めは聞き飽きたよ。
Kazuki's like, no, trust me, genius here. I've run the calculations.
昨夜、私が逃がした周防あまねがまだ戻ってきません。彼女がうまく脱出に成功すれば、
うまく脱出できる可能性はどれくらいと見積もっている？
正直な数字を聞きたいですか？
Yes.
どれぐらいだ？
Don't tell me the odds.
10%。
Oh.
期待するには低すぎる数字だな。
Dude, Amine made it out on a 10%. That's some damn good luck right there.
確かに極めて可能性は低いです。正直、偶然に期待するしかないでしょう。
Dude, when she got out and started grubbing on them cabbages or whatever they were, I think it was cabbage. Oh, oh.
ちなみに先生が脱出を試みられた時、私はもう少し高い数字で期待していました。
But he didn't because he sucks.
すまない。
別に責めているわけではありません。先生には体力的な期待と地元とは言わないまでも多少なりとも地理的な知識があるとの判断で数字を高く見積もっていただけです。
Whereas Amine has nothing.
確かにね。知っている道がすぐそばにある。俺の実家はここから約50キロ圏内だし、学生時代は 車で毎日のように通った道だ。けどね、その知っている道があるという過信が良くなかった。きっとこっちだ、多分あっちだと勘を頼りに歩いているくせに、妙な確信のようなものに引っ張られて間違った道をどんどん進む。
Sometimes I wish I could see like an actual map of like, or like a top-down view of, you know, you like see the road, but I want to see like the entire area that they were trapped in. I just want to see it just because I'm actually curious if you could be like, oh, you just follow the wall here and you could just fucking get out, like, or something like that. I'm just genuinely interested.
このまま進めば夏に大学のサークルでキャンプしたキャンプ場に出るはず。キャンプ場に出られれば助かるかもしれない。そんな風に間違った道を延々と進む。間違っていることに気がついてもそれを認めることができない。認める勇気がない。結局は見覚えのある場所をぐるぐると回るだけ。それなら知らない道と割り切って迷わずまっすぐ突き進む方がマシ。
Oh, god damn it.
先生、 先生、吐かないで。内臓の痙攣が止まらなくなります。無理にでも飲み込んで。
大丈夫だ、慣れてる。もうずいぶん前からこんな調子で。
God, you're just like, you get back in there. Just
いつ頃から？
ここを出て一人で救助を求めに出た時に口にした木の実が原因かもしれない。
Oh no.
最初はうまいうまいと食っていたが1時間もすると腹に火がついたみたいに痛くなって夜明けまで何度も吐いたんだ。それ以来時々こうして痛みがぶり返す。
You might have done some irreparable damage to that stomach of yours.
出発前に鳥が食わないような木の実は食うなと風見に忠告されたがその通りだったな。
You know, if you just listened to the fucking genius of the group, things would have been maybe a little bit better at least.
先生、診察してもよろしいですか？
Like, Jesus Christ, everyone's fucking just pissing me off.
まずは目を見せてください。
Oh god, you're a ghoul. Holding Ochi's puffy eyelids open with my fingers, I peered in to examine his eyeball. Next, I pulled up on his rough, cracked upper lip. Both his eyes and his gums were showing clear signs of John. What the shit?
肝炎による肝不全かも。
But where had the hepatitis come from? A viral infection? What?
何か変わったものを食べましたか？
Oh no.
さっき言った通り木の実を食べた。赤い実で中にコーヒー豆のような大きな種があった。
Could that really be the cause? Oh, Jesus fucking
下
Christ.
痢をしていますか？
There's only so much my brain can handle.
もうずいぶん前からね。時々真っ赤な便が出る。
Whoo, boy.
出血性下痢ですね。尿の方はどうですか？
Also bloody. Oh no.
なんだかひどく茶色い小便が出る。
Oh no. Hemolytic
お腹を見せていただけますか？
It's like you don't want to look. When Ochi lifted up his shirt, I saw that his stomach was horribly distended.
腹水を起こしてますね。腹部に天井出血があります。消化管出血かも。
This wasn't just an issue with his liver. Bacterial toxins had shut down his kidneys. The man was experiencing multiple organ failure. Jesus!
どうしてもっと早く言ってくれなかったんですか？
That just basically means you're dead.
早く言えばどうにかなったのか。
No.
遅かれ早かれ結晶交換が必要です。どうすることもできません。
ならこれが運命なんだろうさ。
He just fucking lays in a grave he just dug. That wasn't what I'd meant. If we were dealing with highly infectious bacteria, everyone else might be in danger as well. Cruel as it might sound, had we been able to quarantine Mr. Ochi earlier on, it could have prevented others from catching his disease.
それにしても感染源は一体。
Eating people? Uh-oh. Oh, god damn it. In an unsanitary environment, polluted by feces and urine, a human being is a breeding ground for viruses, germs, and bacteria. Yep. And infections can easily spread through water and food. What if he'd eaten contaminated food stuff without preparing it properly? Yep, it's the eating people. Looking at Mr. Ochi's swollen, purple-flecked stomach, it was easy to picture the toxic viruses laying waste to his internal organs. In retrospect, the answer seemed almost obvious. The ultimate cause was...
おそらく例の鹿肉が原因ですね。E 型肝炎です。
Yep. Dude, nothing good happens when you eat people. I'm telling you. Evidently at a loss for words, Mr. Ochi hung his head in crestfallen silence.
私とアマネ以外は鹿肉を口にしています。他の子たちにも感染しているかもしれません。なんとか治療法を考えないと。
They literally ate people. And it's literally virus ridden. I mean, we could have assumed that, right? But ugh.
俺の治療はもういい。これは運命というよりは天罰なのだろう。生き残す価値のある人間だけを救えばいい。どうせ死ぬなら楽に死にたいと考えるような俺のような人間にその価値はない。俺はやれるだけのことをやってここで死ぬよ。
やれるだけのこと？
埋
めるのさ、死体を。ここで起きたことを外に漏らさないためにね。
Oh, well, they gonna. Bad premonitions tend to be the most reliable by far. And in this particular case, my fears proved remarkably accurate. The hepatitis that had ravaged Mr. Ochi's body spread to all the other team members who'd eaten the people. Over the next 2 or 4 days, they all died, leaving only the 2 of us alive. Jesus fucking fuck. The first to go was Captain Sakashida. I immediately returned to her tent after realizing Ochi's condition and found her only half conscious. She was running a fever and showed signs of jaundice. While she woke up a number of times over the next few hours, she wasn't able to answer my questions about her condition. The most she could manage was to quietly close her eyes when I asked her if she was dead. Eventually, she no longer responded to anything I said. Flies began to swarm around her, as if smelling her impending death in the air. And after a few hours after with her eyes open just a sliver, she stopped even blinking. In the end, Captain Sakashita died in that tent, without even touching the last serving of rice I'd left at her bedside. As if taking their cue from their captain, the others began to die in quick succession. The next to go was Koide Ritsu. Unable to endure the pain or her hunger despite her body's inability to digest food, she secretly stole some rice in the night, cooked it in a small stream, or near a small stream, and devoured it greedily. Oh, jeez. Of course, her weakened internal organs couldn't accept the nourishment. In the end, she vomited it up, her stomach no doubt burning with pain. I found her lying dead on the spot the next morning. Her corpse showed signs of jaundice as well. Although it wasn't the immediate cause of her death, hepatitis was clearly to blame. Although I'd initially expected Kaneda-senpai to die right off the bat, so did I. She clung to life with remarkable persistence. Still, in time, she began showing signs of hepatitis as well. It was impressive that she lasted this long, and I tried to encourage her by telling her how lucky she was, but her end arrived with surprising suddenness. She'd been holding an ordinary conversation with me only 10 minutes before. Now she was dead. Her brain had been pressured by the bubble of air inside her cranium for days, and her internal organs were ravaged by disease. Perhaps they had simply grown sick of struggling to function. Well,
というわけで、結局生き残ったのは私と先生だけになってしまいました。
well.
そうか。
With that brief reply, Mr. Ochi rose from the rock he'd been sitting on and picked up the shovel he'd stuck into the
ま
ground.
た穴を掘って埋めるのですか？
I'll do what I can before I die.
ああ、そうだ。だが埋める前に遺体をバラバラにする。
It's fucked up, but okay.
どういうことです？
Like what? I mean,
ここであったことは誰にも知られてはならない。
oh, we knew that though, right? Lifting up his shovel, Ochi stabbed it down into one of the corpses.
俺が今していることは人として最低な行為だ。
Once again, he swung his shovel.
つまりはバラバラにした死体をかき集めて亡くなってしまった分をごまかすための偽装を行っているわけだ。
Again and again he swung.
バラバラにした死体を組み替えて一人ずつ数を揃えて赤穴に埋める。
I would not be wanting to watch that. He swung with all his might.
そうすればここで起きた出来事は
I still wouldn't want my body to be completely cut into a million pieces.
残念ですが、人参の数をごまかすようにはうまくいきません。発見された遺体が不自然に損壊されている時点で、調査当局は DNA 鑑定を依頼するでしょう。
Kansuke's like, you know this is a thing.
そうなれば、数が足りていないことは容易に発覚しますし、偽装があったことでより深く調査が行われ、結果、すべてが発覚してしまいます。
Literally, it's just pointless.
それはそれで構わないさ。こうして遺体に偽装しているのは俺だ。いずれは俺も死ぬ。俺が死んで俺の死体がバラバラでなければ俺が犯人ということだ。ここで起きた出来事は全部俺の責任になる。それでいい。
That's right. That's right.
それが先生に残されたやるべきことですか？
そういうことだ。風見、もし君が死んだら 君の死体もバラバラにするつもりだ。今のうちに謝っておくよ。すまない。
Haha, we don't have to worry about this.
もし先生の方が先にお亡くなりになったら、もしくはほぼ同時に死んだらどうするおつもりですか？
その時はシャベルを握ったまま死んでいる奴が犯人だ。俺はこのシャベルを死んでも離さない。
そううまくいくとも思えませんけど。
俺のことなんかより風見にもやるべきことがあるんじゃないか。
ありません。
きっぱり言い切ったな。風見はずっとそうだったな。君のそういうところがまるで理解できなかった。
Don't worry, no one does.
いや、俺は部員たちの誰も理解していなかったし、そもそも理解するつもりがなかったんだろうな。
Jesus. We could communicate perfectly well, but none of us had made the effort to understand each other. And so we never learned to trust each other. It wasn't just true of Mr. Ochi. The same could be said for everyone on the team. But even if every one of us had understood and trusted every other member of the group, I'm not about to suggest that we would have survived. For a very long time, humanity's been telling itself that war will die out once we learn to trust each other and talk things through. And in all those years, there's never been a single day in which the world was free of bloodshed. But as for things I'd left undone, the only thing that really came to mind was to prepare for the remote possibility that Amne would return to this place. On the memo that I'd given her, there was an item titled, "If you fail to escape," including a map to the spot where I'd buried some emergency rations on the very day of the accident. Part of the reason I defended Sakshita for hiding away a secret stash of food was that I'd done exactly the same thing myself.
そうね。アマネが戻ってきてしまった時、私が生きている保証もないし、伝言ぐらいは残しておくべきかしら。
At this point, it seemed like the only task I'd left outstanding. Taking a small notebook from among Koide-san's personal possessions, I carefully ripped out 2 pages of paper. On the first leaf, I wrote a letter for the scenario in which she failed to escape. To my dear best friend, Suo Amane. Ow. Since you're reading this letter, I'm afraid it seems that you've returned to this hellish place once more. And unfortunately, I'm no longer here to help you. If things went as planned, I have probably been cut up into pieces and buried. But if that isn't the case, you might be reading this in front of my corpse. Should the latter be true, and I've died an unsightly death with my eyes half open, I'd appreciate it if you tried not to stare. Also, you're officially forbidden from succumbing to despair. I expect you to survive until the very end. In order to facilitate this, I've left you all the food I can. I sincerely hope that help will arrive in time, and that you will leave this forest alive. On that note, if you do manage to survive, I have a favor to ask you. God damn it, it concerns my little brother. Now that I'm gone, our house will no longer be a home for him. If you could possibly do so, I want you to save him. My Yuji is a cowardly little crybaby, just like the one reading this. His kindness is about all he's got going for him. Bit of a hopeless boy, really. Even so, he's my one and only brother, and I love him very much. Leaving him is my only regret. Yuji needs a reliable woman by his side. He's the sort who can't manage anything alone. If at all possible, I'd like you to take care of him. To take my place as his big sister. Well then, now that I've made my final request, I expect you to struggle stubbornly until the bitter end. Respectfully yours, the greatest friend of your life, Kazami Kazuki. P.S. Now that you've read this letter, please dispose of the other one without reading it.
まあこんなところかな。
Now the other one. Next, on the second leaf, I wrote a letter for the scenario in which her escape was successful. To my dear best friend Suo Amane. First of all, congratulations on getting out alive. If you're reading this letter, I expect several years have passed since the accident, and you're finally beginning to calm down and face up to what occurred here. I'm sure you opened this box in search of answers, an explanation of the events after your escape. Therefore, I'll now give you an effective, or the executive summary, effective summary. Everyone died from illness. Surprised? Well, I should think so. Very well. I'll give you a short rundown of the particulars. The trigger of these events, that is to say the ultimate cause of their deaths, was eating the improperly prepared meat of Haruka-san. Haruka had spent the last 2 weeks of her life lying in her sick bed with fractured legs. Owing to the unsanitary conditions and her severe vitamin deficiencies, she ultimately began suffering from severe skin diseases. You remember this, I assume. In addition, her immune system had been weakened badly by a number of factors, including her advanced malnutrition and irregular excretion. Bacterial toxins built up heavily within her body, directly leading to her death. If we'd cremated Haruka-san's remains immediately afterwards, there likely wouldn't have been any danger whatsoever. But incinerating a human corpse requires considerable thermal power, and we'd used up our supply of gasoline, rendering a fire of the requisite temperature beyond our means. Well, I suppose there was nothing anyone could have done about that. In any case, as a result of consuming that contaminated meat, there was an abrupt outbreak of acute internal disease. Symptoms included shivers, vertigo, fatigue, as well as diarrhea, and the dehydration that accompanied it. Within 2 to 4 days of sickening, nearly all were dead. Of course, since you never ate the meat in question, you were spared this fate. Do you still remember what Haruka-san said to you that day, near the end as you nursed her at her deathbed? Suo-san, I'll repay your kindness someday. Even if I die, I'll never ever forget this. She kept that final promise, I believe. I'll bet in a form I'm sure you never expected. The ones who truly saved your life might well have been the germs swarming over that meat. But I know your gentle heart. I'm sure you're giving all the credit to your dear friend Kazami Kazuki, who offered up her body to protect you. I'm sure you've offered me many tearful thanks. Therefore, I've got a favor to ask you. If my little brother has lost his way, if he's suffering alone, I want you to find him and help him. My Yuji's a cowardly little crybaby. Again, like the one reading this. His kindness is about all he's got going for him. A bit of a hopeless boy, really. Even so, he's my one and only brother, and I love him very much. Leaving him is my only regret. If Yuji happens to be standing next to you as you read this, he's a very fortunate young man. He needs a reliable woman by his side. He's the sort who can't manage anything alone. Oh, Amine endings. If possible, I'd like you to watch over my little brother forever. Well then, so long as we're both alive, let's meet again somewhere, someday. Respectfully yours, the greatest friend of your life, Kazami Kazuki. Ah!
さすがに殺し合いで死人が出たとか書けないわよね。
Dude, I can't wait. I can't wait for Amine to see her again. It's gonna be super emotional. Most likely, Amine would be reading this letter years from now, when she was finally coming to terms with her past. At that point, informing her just how horribly things had turned out in the end would that'd be a bit too cruel.
そうか。
As I imagined the circumstances in which Amne might be reading the second letter, a vague point of concern floated through my mind. It was unpleasant to contemplate, but there was a possibility that the bereaved families would direct their anger and hatred toward her, as the sole survivor of this disaster. Yeah? You fucking think so, Kazuki? Perhaps an additional note was warranted. P.S. If by some chance you currently find yourself in a life or death situation, take the attached kitchen knife and please do your best to eliminate the threat by your own power. I can no longer save you. Believe in a happier tomorrow, if necessary. Fight for it. I firmly believe that you're capable of blazing your own path forward. The ethics. No matter how great the obstacles in your way, even if you feel just about ready to die, so long as you refuse to give up, it'll work out somehow. As an expression of those feelings, more than anything else, I decided to leave the knife I'd taken from Amne along with the
あ
letters.
とはこれを食料の隠し場所に埋めるだけ。
For my own stash, I simply buried Azawa-senpai's overnight bag in the ground. After digging it up, I transferred its contents to the cooler Sakshita had used, then added my letters as well. The first letter I dropped in unprotected. The second I placed inside a piece of airtight plastic Tupperware. This way, if Amne successfully escaped and came back years from now, the slow seeping of moisture into the cooler would have destroyed the first letter. If she returned in the next few days, the first letter would be easier to find, and it instructed her to dispose of the second. I had every confidence that Amne would do so without hesitation. Jesus, I like how she thought of everything, as Katsuki does. After placing the letters and the knife in the cooler, I proceeded to bury it anew, and by the time it was securely hidden in the earth, I had expended the very last of my strength. Utterly exhausted, I lay down on my side and waited quietly for the end to come. Oh my god. Are we done? Can I come back? Oh my god. End me. I see. So that's how it happened.
事故の後、ネット上では様々な憶測が飛び交っていたようだし、中にはあのバス事故は最初から仕組まれていたというような政府陰謀説なんていうのもあったけど、つい面白い方へと考えてしまうのが人間だけれど、その真相は本当にただの事故よ。不運な事故にいくつもの不運が重なった。ただそれだけのこと。
No matter how unfortunate the circumstances, couldn't you have thought up some way to get everyone out of there, Kazuki?
言ったでしょ、私は神様じゃないって。少なくとも当時の私はただの頭でっかちな女の子でしかなかったのよ。
But you were my god.
天才を理解しない者は天才は何でもできると思っている。それが鬱陶しいから私は他人から天才と呼ばれるのが嫌いなのよ。それに
You can find geniuses of my caliber all over Japan if you bother looking, right? You used to say that all the time when we were kids. Anyway, that explains what happened to you on that mountain. But what about afterward? How'd you end up like this?
そうね。そこから先は本当に運が悪かったとしか言いようがないわ。
Oh no, not a turn for the worst.
唯一運がいいと思えることがあったとしたら、アマネが自力で脱出に成功したことぐらいかしら。
Dude, she was grubbing on them cabbages.
そして運よくアマネが下山に成功したタイミングで、私にとって最悪の不運が発生した。
What could be worse than what you'd already gone through?
その日が休日だったというのが不運の始まりね。 脱出に成功した天音の証言をもとに地元警察と市ヶ谷の捜索が入り、捜索開始から8時間後に現場が確保されたわ。
Oh, god damn it. We get this story too. Oh, I gotta save this for next time. I'm already emotionally destroyed. At least we get, well, Mr. Ochi had already died. Bukowski's clinging to life. No, I can't read more. It's already been like an hour. I gotta wait till next time. I gotta wait till next time.